Hello, I want to talk to you today about Jörg Widmann's trumpet concerto entitled Ad Absurdum, which we recorded with the ICO in 2014, I think. We performed it a couple of times the previous year, and my overriding memory of this piece is that it was possibly the most difficult piece I've ever had to play. Um, I remember it arriving in the post. I think things were still sent by post in those days. Now we get them all in emails. But it was just black pages, black, semiquavers all over the place, and a very, very fast metronome marking of crotchet equals 180 something. So it was very intimidating even to sort of start practicing something like that, because you just think, oh my God, like, where am I even going to start with this? And, you've got X amount of time to prepare before you got to go and do the rehearsals and do the performances or the recording. So it's quite intimidating. And like I sort of have a habit of doing, when I get a piece like that into my inbox, I feel like I'm not going to be able to do it, you know. So I'm an absolute nightmare for a few weeks at home. My poor wife has to deal with me, the self-doubt and all of that. And then inevitably I turn up and everything is fine. But with Ad Absurdum, it was slightly different because everything wasn't fine. And some of it turned out really wasn't playable, certainly by me anyway. Maybe a better clarinet player could play it. So what I sort of realized with a piece like that, and I've played some other, obviously some other very, very difficult pieces. Some particular pieces spring to mind. There was a Gerald Barry opera that I recorded with another group one time, which was really unplayable. But what happens when you've got something like that is you really practice as much as you can, and you try and get it as accurate as you can, and you just sort of hope that your conductor and the composer are going to be happy with your efforts. And usually it turns out, when you come to perform a piece like that there's a certain freedom in the inevitability of the fact that you're not going to play every note of this piece exactly perfectly. So what happens with a piece that difficult, sometimes if the piece was a little bit less difficult, actually it would be harder because you'll expect yourself to get everything right. But with a piece like this, which is really, it's quite unplayable in places for almost everybody, I would say, is that you just get a chance to do your absolute best and really go for it and really give it a lash, and then you're sort of free to express yourself a little bit in that, although it's all whizzing past you in a blink of an eye. And we had the advantage, of course, in the ICO, as we always do, of having the wonderful Jörg Widmann as our conductor, music director, and Jörg was the composer of this piece. So we were able to ask him, is it okay if we do this? If it's okay if we do it like this? And Jörg, being Jörg, was very specific about what he wanted, and he was also very specific about what was okay to be maybe not absolutely exactly what he wrote. He was very, very clear about that he wanted the dynamics exactly the way he had written them. So the effects of the sudden loud parts or the sudden soft parts, or the waves that come in the middle of the piece of sort of getting loud and soft, that was very important in amongst this sort of chaotic, busy piece that he had written. And so we did our best with that, and you can hear the recording, I think in the end it was quite successful. The really overriding memory though of actually recording this piece was the sort of absurd virtuosity of Sergei Nakaryakov, the trumpet soloist. The piece was written for him by Jörg, and Ad Absurdum really is an appropriate title. It really is absurdly difficult. And one of our own trumpet players in the orchestra told me at the time that in the solo trumpet part, it starts with a very, very long string of semiquavers with no break. So what the soloist has to do is what's called circular breathing. Some of you will have heard of this, but basically it's a technique by which you're able to keep playing, so keep exhaling while you're inhaling for the next breath. It's very, very difficult to do. And along with this circular breathing technique, which is required of the trumpet soloist, there's also an awful lot of double tonguing in the trumpet part. So to articulate repeated notes on a wind instrument, we use our tongue. So you can imagine we make a da 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 sound. So if we have repeated semivowels, let's say they'll go da 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 da. But if it's very, very fast, we can't go da 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 because our tongue gets stuck. So if it's very, very fast, we'll use double tonguing. Not so much on the clarinet. It's actually much more difficult on the clarinet than it is on some of the other wind instruments. But on the trumpet, it's a technique which is not easy, but it's possible. And instead of going da 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 da, the musician goes da ga da ga da. So it's like a da and a ga. So the front of the tongue and the back of the tongue. Da ga da ga da ga da ga da ga da. And you can hear that that's much easier to do fast. Now it was thought, according to our trumpet players in the orchestra, it was thought to be impossible to do both circular breathing and double tonguing on the trumpet at the same time. Nobody had ever been able to do that until Sergei Nakaryakov demonstrated that he could do it, and Jorg wrote this piece which requires both of those things at the same time. The accuracy and the virtuosity and the determination to record these takes that we were doing in the recording session, the determination of Nakaryakov to get it absolutely perfect every time was just astonishing. And that's the thing that will stick with me as a memory of ad absurdum. That and all the practice I did and the grumpiness in my house.